I'm going to talk to you about the new technologies and its impact on social life, on democracy, whatever, how I see it. Why do I talk about it, and what do I know about the modern technology? Especially that I'm an economist. I'm not an IT programmer. I'm not a technical person. I've never actually went to any polytechnic. The reason is because actually some time ago, about 2 years ago, I embarked on a project, educational project called the blockchain and the new technologies. I believe that this was an area which needed a lot of education. When I first time heard about blockchain, it was like, what is it? Okay, and then I started to actually talk to people who were involved in it. And then I discovered that among the circle of people who know about it, everybody knows about it, and they talk about it all the time. You go outside from the small group and nobody knows what is it. So first of all, tell me, have you heard about blockchain? Anybody who heard about blockchain, hand up. Bravo. I'll tell you one thing. I've delivered a similar lecture a year ago in this very hall. I've asked a similar question. There were about 25 people sitting here. Do you know how many people knew about it? One, except myself. There were 2. So now it's a huge difference. 1 year passed, and now people know at least what's blockchain. I had to start with Bitcoin, tell them what it is. Anyway, let's start on my presentation. It's long, but if you want to ask any questions, please do it. Do interrupt me. I have plenty of slides, too many. You have to bear with me. I'm not going to read them because you can read for themselves. And I'll be looking into my presentation because I can't remember everything. But let's begin. Okay, here. Well, you've probably heard about the Industrial Revolution 4.0 because this is a hot topic, actually. It was initiated some time ago. Klaus Schwab, who is the CEO of the World Economic Forum, he wrote a book. First, he published an article, then he wrote a book. The book was published a year ago when he was claiming that we have a new industrial revolution. It's a breakthrough. The technological changes will change the way how we live. If you look at those revolutions, look, I mean, we had a number of those revolutions in the past. The first one was actually involved in the discovery of the steam machine. If you remember, we had a steam train, steam machine. We had factories when they were sharing tasks, those sorts of pieces. So it was an extremely fast development, and it changed completely the way how people started to interact. It produces new social classes. There were huge developments. People were initially very poor, but then they were getting rich. The world was developing fast. We had technological revolution number 2, which was related to the massive electrification. This was more or less, I mean, I'll show you the dates, but you know, electrification, electricity actually enabled us actually to change the way how we are handling things. In transportation, we had new ways of actually traveling. There were faster ships which were powered with steam, all sorts of things. It was a breakthrough again. Then we had the revolution number 3, the introduction of initially computers and later on the internet. And for you, for this generation, actually the life without internet seems to be not possible. I mean, how we could survive without the mobile phones, without the internet. But I tell you, 20 years ago, people did not have mobile phones. 20 years ago, there was no internet. And somehow people were communicating. The internet has changed completely the way how we behave. Look, I mean, if you brought somebody from actually 20 years ago right now and put them, let's say, in the Kiev airport, in the Boryspil, if you looked at those people who are actually sitting next to each other, couples, and each of them looking at the strange thingy and sort of, you know, changing something with fingers, they thought that they were completely wackos and something strange. What? Why they are looking at this strange thing? Why they are not talking? Indeed, actually, some people stop talking to each other. They communicate on mobile phones. Sometimes they sit next to each other, they are texting each other. Well, that's life, actually. Whether we like it or not, it changed the ways how we behave. Some people are hiding inside the internet. They have a very, very full social life, but not in the real life. They do it in the virtual life. They can be whatever they want to be. They can actually place a photo. They can actually show themselves much better as a hero, okay? And that's how they communicate. Sometimes they are shy to come out and live in the real life. Those are the changes that we have to embrace. We have to do something about it. I don't say it's negative. I don't say it's positive. This is the fact of life. Here I'm showing you. Oh, oops. Wow. Okay. Let's go back. Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway. So those are the dates. Look, I mean, the first industrial revolution, 1765. As I said, there were still ships were powered by sails. Okay. There were no fast ships. There were no steam engines. Whatever. It actually took a while. Actually, almost 200 years. The second revolution was faster. And you know, the time is really decreasing between those actually industrial revolutions. Now they say that we have this actually industrial revolution number 4, and it's really developing very fast. We have new technologies. I'm talking about the new technologies. Let's look at the list of things that were happening right now. Well, everybody knows about the computers, okay? But we have something which is the new things. The cloud computing. 10 years ago, nobody knew about the cloud computing. Now, if you don't even know what's cloud computing, you are using cloud computing. Because the fact that you are sending emails and you can keep documents in your emails means that you are keeping them in the cloud. That's obvious, okay? I don't have to talk about it. But we have new things. We have quantum computing. I will talk about the quantum computing more about it. And the quantum computing is a reality. It's not a concept. We have neural networks. We have biological data storage. You know that we'll be using bacteria to store the data. We won't be using pen drives anymore, okay? Because pen drives are, you know, obsolete and the memory is limited, whatever, even though this pen drive has got 2 giga, okay? But pretty soon we'll be using bacteria chain to store the data. I'm serious about it. It's pretty well advanced. We'll have optical and mesh computing. We already have cashless economy in a number of countries. I live in Poland, and right now in Poland, a lot of people are not using cash. If you travel there, I'm not sure how is it in Ukraine, but right now, even old people, when they go to shops, they pay with a card. They don't even have to punch any numbers. They just, you know, as you know, they actually just touch actually the, the gizmo with their card. Why? Because in Poland, they were always short of change. If you were paying at a shop, they ask you to pay the exact amount of money. 10.52, okay? You had to pay 10.52. If you gave the lady at the counter or the man at the counter 20 euro bill, you would say, I don't have any change to give you. So right now, you just take a card, you pay the exact number, you go away. And, you know, it's really so obvious. In Poland, at the moment, over 80% of people are using it, compared to UK, where only 30%. This is really changing. If Poland, for instance, was able to not to enter the era of a check. You probably don't know even what the check is. But let's say 15 years ago, if you went to the United States, people were paying with those pieces of paper where they were putting the amount and signing it, and then giving it to people. Then you were cashing in a bank. This had never happened in Poland because Poland jumped from the very basic banking into the digital banking. Same things are happening in Ukraine and many other countries, okay? But we don't even realize that. For us, it's obvious, okay? That's normal. What else? We have blockchain and DOT. I'll talk about blockchain more. We have the Internet of Things, whatever it means, I'll talk about it. Artificial intelligence, robotics, voice technologies. More and more, we are actually using our voice to actually activate things, okay? You know Alexa, you know all those things on different actually power engines, whatever, that you can while using voice command, you can do things. You can talk to your mobile phone and ask them to dial the numbers, whatever. More and more, those technologies will be used so people won't have to type things, won't have to use the keyboard, they will be just using voice command. There will be voice recognition, there are already voice recognition techniques. There are already systems that enables you to translate from one language to another. And in 10 years' time, most probably, you know, I'll be able to talk to you in Polish or in English, and there will be a translation, live translation going in Ukraine, and it will not be funny. Because I remember when there was an artificial translator 10 years ago when I was working for the World Bank, and there was a text translated from English to Polish about some chemical board. The translation was such that we were just dying from laughter. We were rolling on the floor because it was totally crazy. I mean, the translation that we got was, you know, I mean, there was outside of the context, okay? The chemical board, for instance, was translated into chemical plant, because the Polish word for board is, for board, if it's the group of people, it's rada, and if it's actually, if you talk about the plank, it's a piece of wood, a plank, okay? And this translator translated this chemical board, which was the council, you know, dealing with chemical risks, into the chemical piece of wood. And suddenly, you know, why this piece of wood should actually dictate people how to behave if you deal with hazardous chemicals. Anyway, 3D printing. Right now, it's a reality. If you need to have a bone transplant, like many old elderly people, they have their hip transplant, okay? So, of course, they use prosthesis, which is produced actually from metals, whatever. But what you can do is now, they can take your measurements and they can produce, using those 3D printers, this piece of your bone and put it inside. And this is a reality. It costs more, but it will be a reality very soon. There are a number of companies where you can actually, or countries, where you don't keep spare parts, like for the planes. You just send a program and, you know, in this country you can print this big piece of actually, you know, of spare part, whatever. The recent development was in France actually 4 months ago. They printed in 3D printers a house, the whole house. It was assembled from the pieces, a big house. It's unbelievable how this is quickly happening. Well, digital ecosystems, 5G connectivity. Now everybody talks about 5G connectivity. A number of countries will have 5G. This is related to mobile phones, you know. This is extremely fast transmission. So fast that you will be able to actually send through it actually very, very complicated tasks. For instance, I've seen a film which was produced by one of the companies where they were teaching people how to play a violin. And there was this man who was a master in violin. He was wearing special sensor gloves. He was playing a violin. They were using 5G technology to send the message 5,000 kilometers away. There were children wearing the same gloves. They were playing violins. Through those special gloves, they could feel how this master was playing the violin. You can teach actually surgeons how to conduct a surgery, okay, operation on human body, actually, and you will be able to simulate movements of this person. This is because actually 5G enables us to send such a vast amount of data and very fast. So there are incredible possibilities right now. In a number of countries in Europe, they are not even tests, but they are using actually 5G for the industrial purposes. And within the next 5 years, this will be a standard. Like, you know, there were a number of standards, LTE for your phone. When through the LTE you could send music over your mobile phone. You could send complicated pictures, photographs, whatever. This is such a huge data, such a photo that you have. But, you know, you wouldn't believe how much power it requires to send it to another person. Right now you can do it easily within, you know, a split of seconds. Drones. I'm not going to talk about drones. Everybody knows about drones. Neurotechnologies, when you actually combine things that sit in your nerves with the technological things, you know, vast opportunities. Virtual and augmented realities. Virtual realities, everybody knows. You put those special goggles, you see in 3D. But augmented realities means that you can walk into the virtual world and you can do things in it. And not only the movies, but you could actually, as I simulate real things. You can learn performing surgeries, you can learn doing technical tasks, you can learn playing instruments, all sorts of things. Energy capture, storage, and transmission. One of the biggest problems with electricity, for instance, was that we couldn't store electricity. What people did, they were building, for instance, such plants as, for instance, during the times when there was a lot of energy, electrical energy, they would use actually electrical energy to pump up water high above, 100 meters above. When there was a peaking time, actually when everybody was using electricity, you needed a lot, you just release the water to go down, power the turbines, you had additional power. But it was very difficult to store it. You can have batteries like in a car, but they are small and they last for a few hours. But right now, we already have magazines, big stores of energy, huge plants where you can store huge amounts of energy and then you can release it whenever you want. And this is still being developed. 5 years ago, when you talked about those storages of electricity in Japan they were dangerous. There was a big explosion once, actually killed 10 people because this looked like a big pool, by the way. Now, this is much safer. Geoengineering, where you can use, for instance, you can go deep into the earth and, for instance, use the energy which is stored in the earth, the warmth of earth, actually to produce, I don't know, electrical power, whatever, all sorts of things. Space technologies, you can imagine what is it. A word about the quantum computing, you've probably heard about it. This is a completely new way of computers. It's bloody complicated, but basically means that those computers can perform functions. They can crank numbers billions of times faster than normal computers. Actually, there was a simulation done actually, where actually one operation, computer operation, that would normally on a standard, very advanced computer would take 300 trillion years, was done in 10 seconds. They are bloody difficult. This technology is not easy for a number of reasons. For instance, it requires actually to work in the temperature which is almost absolute zero. And it's very difficult to get such temperatures. It's very unstable. It works in a different logic than normal computers. But there are already such computers in existence. They are working. There are some computers which are already done. The IBM has got a computer. You can even rent it. You can rent actually this power of the computer. Google announced that they have a computer and they actually did a transaction which would normally take 10,000 years. There was a dispute between IBM and Google whether it's real. But there are some private organizations. So look, the next 5 to 10 years we'll have those computers. And they will have a very strong impact even on blockchain. As we talked about, I'll tell you about it later. Okay, blockchain. As I said, 2 or 3 years ago, nobody heard about it. If you ask people, they had no idea what was it. Usually you have to start with Bitcoin or Ethereum. Well, this is Bitcoin. Everybody knows about Bitcoin. I'm not going to talk about it. But basically, blockchain, what is it? This is a network. Basically, when you have computers sitting in a network, they are separate computers. There's no direct control. There are no agents. And those computers, they communicate to each other. They actually do transactions and they verify transactions. And it stays there. And you cannot really touch it unless you agree as a whole group of people who have those computers that you want to make some changes. And even if you change the transaction, the trace will stay. There will be, the old transaction will be there, and you cannot change it. This is actually a great thing, but it's also a problem. The blockchain sometimes is called distributed ledger technology, DLT, although they are not exactly the same thing. But this is basically, we're talking about the public record of transactions. As I said, actually it sits on a number of computers and need to come to an agreement as a big group. Well, one of the things which was used basically when blockchain was discovered was that there were a lot of projects that were telling people, we are going to use this new technology, we are going to use blockchain, we'll produce wonders, it will bring huge amounts of money, but we need to have money from initially to start the project. And that was an idea for ICO. This was initial coin offering. This was the way of collecting money from people actually for certain projects. ICOs were conducted without any regulation initially. So basically, you could go and you could collect money and you did not have to get an agreement from your central bank or from financial supervision or whatever, okay? Those are some examples, actually. You probably heard about the Telegram, which is a communicator originated in Russia. They managed to collect almost $2 billion very, very quickly. There was a company in Poland which still exists called Golem. I'm not going to talk about it, but it still exists. It's a real project. They collected $8.5 million in 30 minutes. That's what they needed. It took them 30 minutes. All the money was there. There are some also good examples. At some stage, those ICOs were going very fast. And then last year, they tumbled down, and now there are very few ICOs. Why? Because there were real things, real projects where there were people putting money, but also there were a lot of crooks who were saying, okay, listen, we'll do wonders. This is called blockchain. This blockchain will bring a lot of money. You don't understand it? Yes, because you are too stupid, but trust us, this is a new technology. Just give us the money, and we'll give you the whole thing in a few years. 90% of them were just scams. People took money, they disappeared, and people were left without any money. So now, in many countries, ICOs are forbidden, and there was a decision last year by the SEC, by the American Supervision of Transactions, and right now it's actually illegal in the United States to do ICO without getting an approval from SEC. So you have to normally go through the process of getting approvals, being screened by the financial supervision, whatever. And people who are doing it say, no, you don't want to be subjected. So they stop collecting money that way. But still, it's a very innovative way of actually of collecting money in a process like that. Okay, blockchain, is it really something that will actually change the world? Is it the new promise? Is it the holy grail that everybody is looking for? Is going to bring actual miracles? The World Bank, I spent 16 years working for the World Bank. My colleagues from the World Bank say, okay, blockchain, this is actually the thing. It will change the world. It will lower gender inequality. New technologies, this is something which God sent for women to actually improve their situation. And it's partly true. We go to India, see what happens, what the mobile phones gave to Indian women from poor areas. Some of them, they can conduct their own small financial companies. They are very good in new technologies, whatever. The question is whether it will really deliver that. The World Bank said also that actually blockchain and cryptocurrencies will help to fight corruption and fraud. This is related to the fact when you are sending money to help each other, you are trying to monitor the projects. It's really a good thing because blockchain enables you to see whether there were any changes. If you want to change something in the contract or you want to change something in your project that you do, you can easily change the whole documentation. You can play with it. You can actually replace, let's say on the internet, for instance, you have a website. You can replace the website with a new website overnight, and some people will not notice. This was the problem with some of the published banks, where, for instance, and it's a very technical story, but basically, the banking supervision was saying, okay, you cannot place the new regulations on the website only. You need to send it to your clients because you can actually play overnight and actually just change some numbers on the bank regulations in terms of the payments of interest, and people will wake up on the next day and they will not even notice that actually the situation has changed, that they have to pay more money to the bank. Blockchain will not allow you to make such changes unless 50% of people who are involved in blockchain agree to do that. And secondly, if you do the change, the old version will stay. You can always go back and see what was in the past. You cannot remove it. This is a beauty, but this is a problem as well. I will tell you why. Again, let's actually use cryptography, which means that it's safe. It's very difficult to hack it. You cannot almost hack it. It guarantees that the information is accurate, it's transparent. And what's more, you can have transactions where you don't need to have humans. Have you heard about smart contracts? Anybody? Okay, smart contracts, they are small computer programs, algorithms, self-executing. Imagine, for instance, that you insure yourself against the fact that your plane arrives late, okay? Right now, if you fly within the European Union, your plane is late by 4 hours, you have a right to get a compensation of 600 euro, and this is true, okay? Now, to get this money, you have to make a claim, you have to go, fight for it. Sometimes you hire a company to represent you, they take 40%, so finally you get the money, but you get only 40% out of 600 euro. But you can imagine that you have a contract with the insurance company which is connected to the system of monitoring changes, and if your plane is late, the computer will pay you the money directly. They will not ask questions. There's a contract written in it, it's self-executing. If A happens, then there's a consequence B. There's no humans, actually. You sign a contract, and if this situation happens, which is included in the contract is self-executing. And this is called a smart contract. And this is a reality. Smart contracts are already here, already actually in many things, in many blockchain projects. Some people say that it will be a breakthrough for the financial world. It will totally change the way how we do our finances. It enables micropayments. What do I mean by micropayments? But, you know, right now, to send the money over wire or to make a transaction, a money transaction through the bank, you need to actually, you cannot go below a certain threshold. For instance, in Poland, the average transaction, if you want to, you know, transfer money, costs you about €1, more or less €1. So if you want to send, let's say, 20 euro cents to somebody, it makes no sense because you're sending 20 cents, but the cost of the technical cost of the transaction is €1. So whether you like it or not, you will have to pay €2 for this sending 20 cents. But with blockchain, you can send 1 cent, even less than that, and the cost will be minimal. It will be 1 to 2%. Why should you send or make payments of 1 cent or 1 grosz? Okay, well, for instance, for children, if they want to enter something into the internet, to watch something, to whatever, normally it doesn't really make sense actually to charge for it, but perhaps, you know, it will be possible to charge a very small amount of money by using blockchain. So it opens enormous possibility. It lowers the cost of doing banking. Of course, it will actually foster economic growth. Everybody says so, that it will be really, really something. Blockchain, as you know, was actually, by the way, invented by a mythical person. Have you heard about Satoshi Nakamoto? Anybody? Oh, this was a great story. I mean, I don't have enough time to talk about it, but there was this fellow over 10 years ago, 11 years ago, who actually published a manifesto, and he said, we don't want to have agents. We don't want to have intermediaries when we do transactions, contracts, whatever. And we don't need to trust each other. We can develop a system which the trust is inbuilt. So you don't have to trust because you cannot change it. You cannot cheat it. And this is going to be called the blockchain. And that's how the system was developed. This is a pseudonym. This person, actually, the real name of Satoshi Nakamoto is unknown. Some people say that it was one Japanese, as the name suggests. But some other people, they said that there were 2 Irish people, 3 Ukrainians, or perhaps 1 Poland, 3 Russians, or whatever. Nobody knows. The guy developed Bitcoin, the whole system around Bitcoin, and then he disappeared some 5 years after. And he reappeared some time ago when actually the journalist located a Japanese called Satoshi Nakamoto, and where they were telling that this guy, who is a teacher in Japan, that he is the one. And then Satoshi Nakamoto emerged from, you know, nowhere and said, no, 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 I'm telling you, this is not this guy. So still nobody knows. One thing for sure we know, he's an extremely rich person because he's the person who invented Bitcoin, and the story behind Bitcoin, you know. So the name is worth to be known because this is like a new mythology. For some people involved in new technologies, he is almost next to actually, I don't know, a prophet. Now, I was telling about actually the promise of the blockchain. But for some people, this is a huge threat. I mean, this is really something that can actually destroy our civilization, destroy our democracy, destroy our business system. I put it the question whether this is a horseman of the apocalypse. If you read the Bible, you know that the apocalypse, the riders of the apocalypse, they can bring all sorts of problems actually and can destroy us. Some people say it's a danger to the economy. There was a professor at London School of Economics who said, blockchain has no future. This is just a gimmick. It will pass, you know, I mean, it will exist only for a year or so. It will disappear. Why should you worry? Just live it. You don't want to study. Some people say, it will be a bubble, like a typical bubble, like ICOM, like dot-coms. Actually, it will burst. People will lose a lot of money. McKinsey said, no, the technology is not mature. We need to watch it, but we do not have a developed blockchain to really implement it in real transactions. You cannot do real business. Some people say it will exclude a lot of people. Those people who cannot use computers, they will be excluded from the world. If everything is taken by the blockchain and you only access it through the computer, then some people will be left out. Elderly, some other illiterate people, whatever. So there will be a huge group of digitally excluded persons. Some people are saying this is a danger to climate. This is a danger to the energy sector. The technology of producing actually cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, they are really very energy expensive. You have actually huge amounts of computers who are consuming a lot of electrical powers, and they compute against each other to validate transactions. That's how it works, without going into technical issues. So basically, for instance, Bitcoin itself is consuming more energy than Denmark per year. A lot of energy consumption. So they say, okay, I mean, all those transactions will destroy our system because we need more and more energy. Well, this is partly true because, I mean, the blockchain is changing, the technology is also changing, computers are using less energy, there will be new computers like those that I've mentioned, quantum computing, but still this is an issue. Some people say, okay, it will promote terrorism since it cannot be controlled because blockchain cannot be controlled. Central authority cannot go and check the controls. You can make transactions whether you want, and there are no banks or authorities who would actually check what is sent. You can finance terrorists. You can finance all sorts of illegal things. Okay, cybercrime, fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. You can send money actually without being, I mean, in blockchain, you can send money and nobody knows that you are sending them money. There's no way that they can actually pin you down and say, you, Jacek Wojciechowicz, you should send that money to that place. This is a money laundering. You stole this money and now you're sending it somewhere else. Indeed, it protects your anonymity. True. You can actually... have you heard about the darknet? Anybody heard about darknet? Well, okay, what's darknet? You know what's internet, okay? But there is also an alternative internet underground. A real thing. It's called darknet. It has got some names. And it's easy to access. This is this internet when you're totally protected. Nobody knows who are you, and you can make transactions. You can hire a murderer. You want to kill somebody, okay? I don't like somebody. Okay, I want to hire a murderer. Why I don't do it? I'm an ethical person. Okay, but if I'm not an ethical person, okay? But I have money and I can pay for it. I'm afraid that somebody will see that I'm hiring somebody, or they will catch a murderer, and they will say, okay, Jacek Wojciechowicz paid for this murder, so I'm not doing it. You go to darknet, you can hire a person actually who can kill somebody, you can pay this person, nobody will know who actually asked for such a decision, who paid the money. You can send money to finance terrorists, nobody will trace it. Those are you can buy drugs, you can buy pornography, even child pornography, you can do all sorts of things. You can buy illegal weapons, you can buy things, for instance, to steal money. There was a huge Bulgarian net for some time that existed where they were selling gadgets actually to put on ATMs, those machines that you were taking money out. And there were skimming machines that would actually take, when you put the card, they would record all the data and then they would actually go into your account and steal all your money. This was done through the darknet. And as I said, the darknet is reality. It exists. The police, all those international police forces, whatever, they try to crack it. They manage to get somebody, they temporarily crack it, and then somebody else is replacing it, and it's on and on and on. Some people were already put to jail, but the darknet exists. So people say the darknet, actually the blockchain is an ideal thing for the darknet. There were some real things actually. I mean, it was discovered, for instance, that some terrorist actions were financed, the money was sent over the blockchain. There was a very famous scandal with Silk Road, which was actually a special platform for making payments. It was used for money laundering. Its founder went to jail, but it was actually, he was captured and tried and sentenced. But the question is whether the blockchain really exists in the real world. A lot of banks are already actually thinking of using actually blockchain or even using it. In Poland, there are 3 banks which are already using blockchain for the purpose of recording data from the customers. I've already mentioned to you that, for instance, the banks had to send physical printouts of their fees and other conditions to all their clients because the financial authorities would say you cannot put it on a website because if you put it on a website you can change it overnight and there is no proof that you haven't done it. And this is the regulation of the European Union. What they did, they managed actually to go through the blockchain, and the blockchain which is actually protects you from making any changes. Right now, 2 of the Polish banks are already placing their data on the blockchain. Why you can actually get money out of it? Very simple. Every year, they were paying like 10 to 20 million euro in postal charges in stamps for sending it to millions of their clients. Right now, they don't send it by mail. They don't have it. They just put it on the website in the form of a blockchain, and it's accepted by the financial authorities. So those banks, those two banks, are already saving a lot of money. One of such things was introduced in June last year. Another was introduced in September. I know people who did it personally. What else? You can use it in public sector as well. And more real and serious institutions are involved in that. In 2018, in February, there was a big institutions in the European Union established. It's called the EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum. This is like a huge think tank. It was established by the European Parliament, by the European Union with a big money, which studies actually blockchain, does all sorts of reports, whatever. It's a very serious institutions, and they are very serious people in there. Some countries, they've adopted actually regulations that enable to control the ways of how you gather money for those projects. What it's known right now, probably next year, about 20% of all transactions, financial transactions in the world, will be used through blockchain. Accenture, it's a big consulting company, huge consulting company, estimates that the smart contract, I spoke about the smart contract, will bring 12 billion euro savings within the next 5 years. There's a company which is called Gartner who says that smart contract will be used in 3 years' time or 2 years' time in 25% of all organizations all over the world, which will mean a huge breakthrough for the legal companies, for those offices, legal offices, because they will have to fire some lawyers. They will have to concentrate on more complicated things. They will not be doing any more simple contracts. Those contracts will be done by the programmers. And also the lawyers, if you consider actually career as a lawyer, will have to learn how to do programming. I have 4 daughters, 2 small, and my 2 small daughters, 9 and 10, they are already in 3rd year doing programming and robotics. They're going to play, they produce, they make robots and they program those robots to do things, to move, to make sounds, whatever. This will be a reality. We'll have to learn how to program, or at least to understand how you do programming. What kind of applications you can use? Already blockchain is used for digital identity, which will replace passports and whatever. As communication programs, Telegram already exists. You can use it for elections, it already happens. Educational databases, when you get, for instance, a certificate, and you cannot give a forged certificate, okay? Because some people buy, like driving licenses, okay? Now it will be almost impossible actually to buy yourself a forged license without actually going through the course and passing the exam. Cloud computing already exists, as I said. All sorts of things are already happening. In the public sector, we talked about public sector, we want to talk about democracy, social life. Well, we have e-governance, where we already have mentioned actually about e-identity voting, but also there are some actually possibilities for fighting corruption, terrorism, forged documents, title assets, smart contracts. Yesterday, I took a plane from Warsaw to fly to Kiev. I haven't been actually to the Warsaw airport for, I don't know, 9 months. And I was totally surprised, because when I was going actually to do through the passport control, right now the passport control is fully automated. You come in front of a place where you can actually put your passport, they scan your passport, it allows you to go into a glass, like a cage, you enter in, there is a camera, and there is your photo shown. It actually focuses on your face, and it checks your face against the data which is stored in the computer. And if it's okay, if my passport and my face are done together, then it allows me to come in. There's no man, no officer to check my passport, say you can get through now. It's all fully automated. It looks simple, okay, but it requires a huge computer data, very secure. It needs artificial intelligence to be able to do face recognition and to really check whether my face is this guy and whatever. It's very technologically advanced. And right now, normally when you fly to Kiev, It takes you 25 to 30 minutes just to go through the passport control to get into this section of the airport where you're flying out of the European Union. Yesterday, it took me 1 minute, perhaps. Okay, I mean, Poland is not the most advanced technologically country in the world, no way. But I was totally surprised, really. I mean, it took me aback. So, things are really happening, they are in use. This actually enables us actually to do different ways of dealing with citizens. Whether it's good or not, to what degree it can actually encroach our, personal information, whatever. Whether it's dangerous because a hacker can get into it, that's a different story, but definitely it's happening. I spoke already about those things. Actually, those are examples when in some countries, blockchain and new technologies are already employed actually to do a work for public service. Interestingly, in Sweden, for instance, they do land register. If you buy a piece of land, real estate, it sits on a blockchain. The register there. But not only Sweden. Sweden is an advanced country. Ghana, in Africa, where, they did not have written records. They were using aerial photographs, using drones. They were taking photos of the land. They were putting it into digital map. And if you wanted to buy a property, we are using blockchain there to put it into the register. So they jumped through from the normal book, the old book, perpetual book, where you put those entries, already into the world of 22nd century, I would say. Smart contracts we mentioned. Digital nation in Estonia, the most advanced, actually, probably, a country in terms of technology in the world. Small, really, yes. Estonia is the size of Warsaw, okay? But anyway, you have actually, most of the registers, official registers, are sitting, in the internet on the blockchain because it's safe. Healthcare, medical records, Estonia again, it has to be protected. It's actually, critical data. In Malta, you get educational certificates. But there are some questions about actually the use of blockchain. Unclear regulatory environment, legal risks. There's a problem with GDPR. As you know, GDPR, this is actually the regulation in the European Union that protects your personal data. For instance, it says that you have a right to remove all the records. If you don't want something to sit on your record, you can go and ask to have it removed. The problem is that once you have information about you in blockchain, you cannot remove it. And what do? That's a big clash. And the lawyers are, at the moment, they are discussing for the last 2 years how to deal with that. There are problems with privacy. There are problems with scalability, how you can easily increase it, to what way, in what way. Quantum computing. Why did I put quantum computing? Because right now, since actually the data on blockchain is cryptologically actually secured, we are using cryptology, computers actually, to kind of, makes your data that you cannot crack it. But with the quantum computing, you could probably easily crack those actually security measures. Although some people say, at the same time, if we have right quantum computing, we'll be using it for cryptography. So quantum computing will enable us also to do cryptography in a much sophisticated way, so it won't be so easy to crack it. Anyway, it's an apparent argument. They say that it's not interoperability, it's not very easily achieved. So you cannot actually communicate. One blockchain cannot communicate with a different blockchain. There are different types of blockchain, public, private, whatever. They don't communicate. So we need to actually somehow do it in such a way. Kavita Gupta, who is actually a scholar at Stanford University, and she is actually a CEO of a big technological company, once said, don't use blockchain if you don't need it. Don't do it just for the purpose to be modern. Don't do it because you want to have a technical innovation. Use it when you really need it. The question whether you really need it. GDPR, I've already mentioned, this is actually, General Data Protection Regulation. This is a big issue for blockchain and for such things. And I also want to, since we are talking about the social aspect, I also talk about this cryptoanarchy because I think it's an important issue. And so far, I don't think that anybody talked about it. Blockchain was developed in a form of an anarchy manifesto. Satoshi Nakamoto was saying, I don't want anybody to regulate my work. I don't want to have any intermediaries. I don't want to have banks actually to make transactions. I want to be able to pay like I normally go and pay in cash to somebody on the street. And I don't want anybody to know about it. No. Okay? I don't want anybody to tell me how I do my business. I don't want anybody to ask me for my identity. So this is more or less like an anarchy. I don't want state to regulate me. And indeed, actually, blockchain, this is kind of like an anarchy kind of technology that enables you to do all sorts of things. It ensures your anonymity. You don't have to tell who you are. You have a total freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want. Nobody really sue you because they cannot trace who you are. A total freedom to trade. You can buy illegal things. If you want, you can buy drugs. Nobody will catch you, okay? Sorry, I did not turn on my phone. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm just turning it off, okay? You cannot trace any transactions, so it's really, really an issue. There are some recommendations made by the EU. I'm not going to read them. You can get this presentation later on, because there will be too many slides to show you. But basically, there are some concerns, and some organizations, some states are trying to regulate it nevertheless. It's not easy, so now you make recommendations. But basically, there are three ways or four ways of doing it. First, you need to develop blockchain platforms as a service, and this is actually the task for governments, for states. If you want to deal with blockchain, build the infrastructure. If you build roads, so people can use public roads instead of actually, using some other ways of transportation. You have to be able to develop a real e-identity. So people will need to have their identity, not in the form of formal documents or some actually documents sitting in some record, but needs to be done in a digital way, and everybody needs to be. Then you need to tokenize fiat currencies. Fiat currencies are just normal currencies, like hryvnia, like zloty, like euro, a dollar, okay? Cryptocurrencies are Bitcoin, whatever, Ethereum, whatever. But you can turn real currencies into cryptocurrencies, and some countries are already doing that. And if this is only the way of how you actually present your currency, you don't need to have them in a formal way. Well, it's a long discussion and long topic. I don't want to dip into it, but this is really very important if you have a proper kind of framework for using blockchain. And then you need to have rules, policies and regulations and rules, how to do it. The question is to what degree you can implement those rules. I'll mention it. Very quickly about artificial intelligence. Everybody knows about artificial intelligence. This is actually interesting things because actually this is actually the way how computers are learning things and how can they emulate humans, okay? Already they are used for speech recognition, for learning, for planning, problem solving. The sophisticated artificial intelligence projects are doing all that. Basically, it started with Alan Turing. I suggest you actually check the name. Very famous fellow, actually, who basically started the computer science in 1937. He was very active in the 40s and the 50s, and he introduced the Turing test, saying what's the real artificial intelligence. Basically, very simply. By the way, if anybody asks you about the Turing test, I thought, bloody hell, I am not going to understand it. It's too technical. I'm not a mathematic mind. The Turing test was that if you have artificial intelligence who talks to you, you cannot see it through the computer, actually the machine will pass the test if 30% of people at least can be fooled that they are talking to humans. Very, very simple. You talk to the computer talks to you, and you cannot recognize that this is a computer. You start to believe, no, I'm talking to a real person. If 30% people believe, they are passing the test. This is a Turing test. Very simple. Deep learning, that's another thing. It's really important. Actually, this is the way how the artificial intelligence is really evolving. It's developing and it's getting deeper. What was discovered? That artificial intelligence can teach itself. It was a very interesting, actually, some time ago, a very interesting project was done. It was called AlphaGo and AlphaGo Zero. AlphaGo is a game. It's a game. That's a strategy game, 2,000 years old, mainly used in Asia. There are some masters, like people are playing Bridge or some other games. People were playing AlphaGo. And there are some competitions, world competitions, world champions. So actually, Google has developed a machine that would play AlphaGo. They've invited the champion of the world, who was Korean, to play against the computer. This fellow, he sat down in front of the computer, he beat the computer in 10 minutes and said, don't waste my time. No bloody way. What they then did, they put one computer against another computer to play against each other. Those computers played for some time, and after a while they invited the same fellow once again, and he lost. Because the computers learned the game. Moreover, they developed strategies that were never developed by humans over the last 2,000 years. Of course, people, they started to adopt it. They said, okay, this is the new way how to win the game. But this was how computers were teaching itself. Now, if you connect computers to a lot of data, then you may see that this artificial intelligence develops. There are some dangers related to that, and I'll mention that. What are the benefits? It can enhance our efficiency to do things. We don't have to do certain tasks because artificial intelligence will do it for us. You know, there will be a development of the economy. It will supervise learning, telemedicine, automation, all sorts of things. It will expand our creativity. Already people use artificial intelligence to paint paintings, to develop music, to produce poems. You know, the question is whether this is the right way to go or not. Very good question. But already there are some actually artificial intelligence produced pieces of art that compete in competitions and sometimes win. Examples of artificial intelligence in business. You have spam filters, and this is normal. On your computer, if you notice, if you actually start to detect spam and you throw it out into the rubbish bin, after a while, you don't get those spams because the artificial intelligence that sits in your programs is already learning that you don't want to get that stuff in your email or in other things that you are getting. Categorization of emails, voice-to-text features. I mean, you can talk to your computer. It will already, in a number of programs, it will actually start to type. You have to be careful, though, because there will be plenty of mistakes, but this is improving. Automatic translation. You go to Google Translator now, you put text in Ukraine, you get it in English, and you will see it's a pretty good quality. Not what was actually 15 years ago. Automatic responders, automation, sales forecasting, security surveillance. For instance, right now, you have security cameras. Imagine that you have a big airport. You have 150 cameras. And initially, you have 5 guys watching all those 150 monitors to check what was happening. Right now, and this is a reality, computers are programmed in such a way, and also cameras, that they can detect something unusual, and they already alert you. Let's say that you have a train station, and they are programmed to actually make an alarm if somebody is walking on the rails, okay? It's going off the platform on the rails. You don't even need to notice it when you sit it, because the camera and the computer will notice and will say, look at that, there's a man on the rails, or there's a man with a weapon, or whatever, okay? This is already a reality. A lot of companies are producing such things. Smart searches, personalized services, whatever, all those things can be done through the artificial intelligence. But you need to actually have special principles so it will not get out of hand. For instance, Microsoft decided that there will be principles when you actually design artificial intelligence. It has to actually protect your privacy, has to be secure, safe, reliable, fair. You don't have a bias, and I'll talk about bias later. It has to be inclusive, transparent, and accountable. How do you achieve that? Well, this slide shows you actually what are the myths, actually, whether it's real dangerous. Actually, when you think about artificial intelligence, robots, usually you think about Terminator. That the Terminator with the artificial intelligence will come and will kill us, okay? And this is not a real threat, people are laughing. But there are some issues that actually are real, are real issues, and you need to deal with that. You can look at this slide later on. There are some dangers, but they are not necessarily the dangers which are so obvious to us. There are concerns about it. People ask questions. What will happen with my job? Artificial intelligence will come, and I will lose my job. Can we trust artificial intelligence to behave in an ethical way? This is a machine. How do we know it will be ethical? And what kind of ethics it will use, okay? Or what happens if artificial intelligence becomes dangerous to the humanity, to me personally, okay? It will start to take me over. A good example. actually from one of the science fiction movies. Actually, artificial intelligence controls the spaceship when you have humans. Now, it decides that it is more economic to go faster, okay? So the spaceship goes faster. It achieves 3G or 10G, okay? It will have to accelerate. 10G, it's perfectly okay. You can save time, whatever. The only thing is, no human will survive 10G. You will disappear. You will die. Do you have a proof that artificial intelligence would not make such a decision in order to, if actually the main target is to actually got on time with the space travel? You know, you are late and suddenly, you know, the artificial intelligence says, okay, we go faster. It kills everybody aboard, but it gets faster. Because if the purpose is to be on time or to get faster, this is the primary purpose. You need to think what kind of, you know, things are behind such a decision. I mean, it's the question whether you can trust artificial intelligence. Again, those are the risks. One of them is on safety. Things can happen, actually. Accidents can be caused, for instance, by very powerful artificial intelligence which acts independently. There are all sorts of things, but I would like to concentrate on the biased artificial intelligence because this is something really important. One possibility is that you can program artificial intelligence to do very bad things. Corrupt governments, crazy military leaders, terrorists, whatever, they can also design artificial intelligence to kill other humans or do really bad things. And you have to bear this in mind. This is a tool. It can be used for safe purposes. It's like with the kitchen knife, okay? The kitchen knife serves you actually to produce your dinner, okay? But you can kill a person with a kitchen knife. Same story with the artificial intelligence. Also, it's important how you design it. People don't even realize that, for instance, like 80% of the programmers who produce artificial intelligence are males and they are white, okay, especially in the United States. What does it mean? That they don't do it on purpose, but they put into those programs the preferences typical for male. They often ignore women, okay, or they are biased towards women. Also, they are biased towards migrants or towards black people or whatever. So we need to make sure that this bias is not shown in the artificial intelligence. And this is not just a story. This already happened. One of the examples is Amazon has developed an algorithm to hire people. They were using it for the recruitment process. And suddenly they discovered that it was preferring males, that it was preferring people in certain age, whatever, because it was biased by the programmers who did not do it on purpose. That's how it worked. What was else? Actually, I think, yeah, iPhone has produced a card, a paying card, actually, for their employees. It was discovered that it was preferring, again, males. Because actually, and it put into the banking system the story that males are more secure in terms of banking transactions than women. I think it's important for you because you talked about it yesterday. So it's really important that you make sure that you deal with it in a proper way. There's a question about artificial intelligence and ethics. Recently, the European Commission came with a term which is called trustworthy artificial intelligence, TAI. It said that it has to be lawful, so it has to actually really respect the law. It has to be ethical, to respect ethical purposes and values, and it is robust. So it's robust from the technological point of view. It has to respect fundamental rights. So for the first time, we're talking about artificial intelligence in technology that respects human rights. Respect for human dignity, for democracy, justice, the rule of law, equality, non-discrimination, solidarity, citizens' rights. So we don't have such things that actually somebody programs AI to do something devastating. We already talk about autonomous weapons, okay? And they are produced in a number of countries. And there are protests against it. Because this is a pretty near reality when we have robots like in Terminator who will be used in wars to destroy enemies. It's possible, it's easy. Do you think that actually all countries will agree not to do that? Do you think that in North Korea, Kim will have concerns about producing such machines, or in other countries? In some countries, you know, there are things under control. In some other countries, you know, some people think, I mean, who cares about any controls? Or you have a change of a government, and suddenly, you know, a corrupt government or the government comes who says, we don't care about the ethical principles. We can do whatever we want. It can be a very powerful weapon and very dangerous weapon. We have to really remember about it when we develop it. The guidance from the EU is that if you want to have trustworthy artificial intelligence, once again, also all those principles: diversity, non-discrimination, fairness, transparency, protection of privacy, accountability, and whatever. Robotics. Often we talk about robots. That's another area, okay, important. Robotics is already happening, okay? We already have, who knows what's Roomba? You don't know? That's a vacuum cleaner that actually cleans your house itself. You can buy it in every supermarket. It's a round thingy which goes on the floor. It has got sensors, takes corners. It can even charge itself. It's not very expensive. You can buy it for the last 4 or 5 years. It was actually invented by Russians, by the way. Roomba is a robot, okay? It will not take your job, but if you're in a cleaning business, it can take part of your job. Okay? I'm considering buying it because I'm too lazy to vacuum my place. But some jobs will disappear. Autonomous cars already exist, and finally drivers will disappear. I'll tell you. It's a matter of time. In Germany, they're already testing actually long truck trains. You'll have 50 trucks actually connected to each other, going as special trucks on the motorway, when you have only one driver driving it, and finally no drivers. There are already some metro lines when there are no drivers, okay? In Singapore, for instance. People are scared of it, but it's true. Farmers will probably disappear. Definitely, cash registers from supermarkets will disappear. In Poland, there's already a problem. A lot of people working in supermarkets, they join the trade unions because they are afraid that robotics and artificial intelligence will make those shops fully automated. And such fully automated shops are already in existence. Not only in the United States, but they are building the first shop in Poland. It will be open next year. A lot of people will lose jobs. Pilots. You know, the planes will be flying by itself. Soldiers, bartenders, construction workers, cleaners, accountants, interpreters. Those jobs will disappear. But the jobs will stay. The tasks will disappear. We'll have to change. We'll have to educate people, because there will be always a need of humans actually to perform tasks, but those will be different tasks. The jobs of actually lifting a heavy object in a shop, those jobs will disappear. And rightly so. Why should they be there? Instead, you should be able in being able to do something else instead of carrying boxes and putting into shelves, when it can be easily done by a robot with a minimal artificial intelligence. There is something which is called the Internet of Things, very quickly. It's a network of devices that can actually, collect information. Already, I've met actually a factory in Poland. They are producing those big kind of cupboards for parcel service. Probably you know that actually. That right now, when you have courier service, quite often the courier is not taking from you the parcel or bringing it to your house, but you are just getting a code, you are paying it, you put a parcel into a special kind of box in many places, at the petrol stations, whatever. The couriers will develop it somewhere else, and then when you want to pick it up, again, you get a code, you go, you open it with a code, you take it out. It's very popular. My wife uses it all the time. So this is done through the Internet of Things, because actually the producer of those gadgets, he measures what is happening in those actually storage places, and if something is wrong, he gets already a signal, send a serviceman to repair it. Pretty soon, when we service the car, we'll be not actually taking the car every 10,000 kilometers to change the oil, to do a check, whatever, because the cars will send us the information. You can still drive on this oil for another 2 years, or this part needs to be replaced because it's going to break down very soon, or something is happening, something is wrong or not, but you'll be doing it when you need it, and not right now, as you have written in the contract, in the guarantee, it says you need to do the first check after 3,000 kilometers of 5, and then every 10, whatever. This will be gone. This is a huge waste of time, waste of material, waste of everything. Those are the typical uses of the Internet of Things, and those things are already happening. Wearables are those things that you wear, headphones, all those gadgets that you use actually that are on your body, all those watches that actually take your pulse, like your temperature, can design how you train, remind you about things. But you have also smart grid, smart cities, the whole cities which are run with the use of those sensors. smart retail, whatever. A lot of things which are already in use, and this is a huge possibility. There are some risks. There's a risk to security. Somebody can take it over. There are possibilities that, for instance, terrorists, hackers can take over a plane. If there's a plane flying and has those IoT system and it's actually using artificial intelligence to fly it, we have to make sure that actually the terrorists will not take it over and try to crash this plane actually by sending it down. Movies about it, question of the reality. So those are the issues that we have to take into consideration when we develop it. It will develop itself, but we have to think about it. 3D printing, I've already mentioned that, so I'm not going to talk about it. I told you already a house was printed. It's a huge issue. The Boeing factory, the plane factory, already is printing parts in the remote parts of the world. If they need replacement parts for the planes, they don't need to send it. You can do, but very soon you'll be able to print a lot of things at home. So right now, the 3D printers are expensive and very big. They will be smaller and smaller. So, you, for instance, you know, when you buy things, you will not be buying things actually probably from the shop in a physical form. You'll be sent a code, you'll be punching a code, and your printer will produce you something that you need. Let's go and see. But this is already happening. The risks, again, I mean, they are prone to cyber attacks. You can use it to produce weapons. For instance, right now, what happens is, actually, they check you on the border when you carry a gun. But what happens? This is already happening. You can have a printer at home. You go to any country, buy a printer. Somebody will send you actually the, the program, and you will print your gun at home. And you will kill somebody. I mean, so the gun protection and guns control, it will be very difficult. All sorts of problems. You can print drugs. There are already drugs being printed. We think about printing it, in a very technical way, but you can produce drugs. And you buy certain chemicals, and then the program will mix it, will turn them into drugs. You can do all sorts of things. You have to remember that those technologies, they cooperate in each other. We do not talk in separation. I mentioned blockchain, AI, whatever, but they support each other. And this is, it's a certain risk, but it's a great opportunity. They can actually, some problems with certain technologies can be removed by combining those technologies with other technologies. There are endless possibilities with that. What are the issues? I've already mentioned that, so I'm not going to repeat it. But we have to ask such questions when we talk about the new technologies. Can, for instance, artificial intelligence distinguish between right and wrong? Can be taught ethics? Whether the ethics that we teach artificial intelligence is compatible with our society, with our nation, with our country, with our sets of values and beliefs. Can you make AI, artificial intelligence, legally responsible for certain actions? If there is an accident, whom you sue? Do you sue a designer or the artificial intelligence in a car? Do you sue a car producer? Who? Whom you sue? Whom you ask compensation? That's a good question for lawyers, and they don't know it. Or what happens if humans start to use all those new technologies against other humans? I've already mentioned that. Some issues already visible. You can use actually social media to manipulate elections, to manipulate democratic process. Look at what happened in the United States, in many other countries. Deep fakes, fake news. You can produce such fakes that it's almost impossible to see whether it's fake or not. How do you deal with that? The right to forget. Blockchain and the way that you cannot remove the information while it's there. How do you do that? How are you dealing with voting if there is a cyber attack? The question is, you need to educate people, and definitely you need to educate programmers and artificial intelligence creators. You need to have codes of ethics for them. You need to teach them. You need to somehow make sure that they behave ethically. It's bloody difficult, but I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. I say artificial intelligence and other technologies can help democracy. They can produce deep fakes, but they can also help us to detect deep fake. We can have artificial intelligence programs who look at deep fake and they say, no, this is not a reality, this is deep fake. Such programs already exist. They can do language analysis. They can actually be involved in direct democracy. As I said, I think that the answer is transparency. This process needs to be very transparent. self-regulation and education, especially in case of blockchain. This is the only solution. If you have in blockchain people who do not want to be controlled, and there's a certain information on certain things done, how you are going to force them to make changes? You cannot. I remember a conference when a very distinguished lawyer talked to a person, owner of actually blockchain company, said, nobody's going to control me. The only thing is for those people to agree to self-regulation, to say, okay, we are going to self-impose certain things. We are going to control ourselves. If you want to change something in blockchain, you need to have 50% of all the blockchain participants or computer participants, the nodes, to agree. So you need to have such protocols that people agree. You need to bring those people together. This is the only chance at this stage. We do not have other tools. So education, knowledge about it, ethical standards, this is probably a solution. I believe that from the point of democracy, this is really something which is great. I think that it will produce a new democracy, that actually, you know, our children, your children, and even my children, will be better because of the new technologies, although there's a certain threat. But we have to think about it, really how we employ those new technologies. We have to think about what are the possible consequences and how we do that. We cannot allow for all this process to happen not in a spontaneous way, but uncontrolled way where nobody thinks about any consequences what we are doing. I'm sorry, I know that was too many slides. I'm trying to put a lot of pieces in one thing. I'm still in the process of thinking about it. So those are my thoughts. This is not really a clear presentation, but basically that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Please.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I would like to return to that part of blockchain.
Yes.
On one of the slides, you had several countries, the list of countries which introduced regulations.
Okay, yeah,
okay. Can you just deepen into some details what exactly that regulation provides?
Okay, well, I mean, there are countries, for instance, some countries regulate the way how you collect money, ICOs. So there are some countries who decided, okay, like Switzerland. Switzerland is one of the leaders. The European leaders and the world leaders in blockchain use are, in Europe, there's Malta, a country who recently introduced a lot of regulations regulating the ability to use blockchain and collect money. And they said, okay, we know that perhaps there will be European regulations that will tell you that we need to change it. But so far, before those regulations are in place, it can take a number of years, we want to introduce our own regulations to keep it going. Why they do that? Because Malta is not a country where you can actually develop a huge industry. It's a small island, you know, I mean, mainly stones, rocks, whatever. What they do is they are getting more and more companies, technological companies, to set up their businesses in Malta. Those where they use mainly computers and their brains, okay? And that's how they want to encourage people to be there. So they've introduced a number of very interesting regulations. Actually, last year in October, there was a huge conference in Malta, 3 days, on blockchain and new technologies, 6,000 people. There was a Prime Minister of Malta, the Minister of Finance, who actually came to the conference, and they said, we are going to do everything to encourage businesses to come. The effect is that, for instance, a number of Polish companies, like crypto exchanges, also those exchanges that actually change cryptocurrencies into real money and enable people to trade currencies, they moved from Poland to Malta. I know at least about 2, okay? So that's one country. Switzerland, outside the European Union, but nevertheless, you know, you can travel freely there. There's a canton of Zug, one of their, you know, those cantons are more or less independent, like states, okay? Which is a haven for blockchain. They have all sorts of regulations, and they also are using blockchain for all sorts of services, e-identity, whatever. Estonia, it's a very smart country. They were always actually leaders in technological issues, even during the times of the USSR. Actually, they were producing computers, radios, sophisticated electronic equipment. They are using those technologies, and again, they are attracting a lot of business, and they've introduced regulations related, A, to collecting money, being able to use those blockchains, all sorts of regulations that enable people to set up businesses, actually pro-business. So basically, those regulations are mainly to encourage business to function. You can easily register. You don't have to wait for 1 year to be registered because somebody is suspicious about your activity, the way how you pay taxes, those sorts of things. Latvia, Another country who is very much involved in actually improving regulations, recently it was joined by France. French, they did introduce some pro-blockchain and regulations actually at the beginning of the year. Outside the European Union, I'd say this would be Singapore. Dubai, interestingly, they are very much interested in becoming a digital kind of country and a digital nation. They can see a lot of opportunities in that. China, on the other hand, they've introduced actually a regulation which makes ICOs impossible. They say this is illegal. You cannot do that. United States in 2018, the United Security Exchange Commission, the financial regulator said, okay, in order to collect money, you have to actually comply with those very strict regulators for financial institutions. Because, I mean, when you have blockchain and those ICOs, you don't need to go through all those safeguards which are, typical for financial operations. When you set up a bank, you have to meet a lot of requirements. By the way, the first actually blockchain-based banks are being open, actually. One of them is in Lithuania. Initially, they wanted to open it in Poland. They decided to go to Lithuania because of the regulatory aspect. I'm not sure whether this answers your question quickly. Yes?
Yes, I have a question about financial and investment markets, as you are an economist. So how artificial intelligence will impact these markets, how it will change them? I know, for example, about the bots, that you can put some money on these bots and then they calculate currency and applications and so on, and there is almost no risk. And so how does this market look like?
That's a very good question. I will tell you, I'll answer. My answer is simple. At the moment, there is a lack of actually serious research work done on economic aspects of the new technologies, including the artificial intelligence. It's more like some of the consulting companies that say, we hope, we predict this will happen. But if we believe actually to the research done by McKinsey, for instance, or by other big actually consulting companies, because actually at the universities, people, they have problems in embrace it. They don't have tools. They don't know how to actually touch this animal and how to describe this animal. They say that actually in 3 years' time, 20% of all the operations in the world will be with the use of blockchain and artificial intelligence. And they say that most probably this will actually contribute to about 2% of the economic growth globally. So you can really accelerate the growth, providing, of course, that there's a proper regulatory system in place, because right now you cannot do a number of things because the regulations are not ready for that. The problem is that technology was developing extremely fast, and the regulators were not even aware of that. Last year, I've organized a conference in Warsaw on blockchain and regulatory issues. And we're trying to find out the economists and lawyers to participate. This was a conference for academics, for business community, and for regulators. Do you know how many lawyers are in Poland practicing law? More or less. 30,000, 40,000, okay. Do you know how many serious lawyers know about those new technologies in Poland? 3 persons. I know all of them personally. One of them is my wife, by the way. She's a professor of law at Jagiellonian University. 3, perhaps now it's 5. Very few people. Regulators, they don't know about it. They just wake up. The technology is there. Companies are developing. They're collecting money. $8.5 million actually dollars, Polish company in 30 minutes. And they don't know what to do with it. So this is the problem. Unless we have some regulations and some processes in place, this will actually retard the possibility of economic growth. So I say the economic prospects are huge, and things are already happening. But, for instance, the European Union, they act slowly. That's the reason why they set up those organizations, this EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum. They have a big task force on artificial intelligence, whatever. Those things are happening, just to make sure that they accelerate the regulatory approach and they enable, for the business to embrace those technologies. How you deal with the security issues, especially related to AI, I don't know. In terms of autonomous, combat bodies, whatever, those actually artificial digital soldiers, there were protests by the very known actually scientists from all over the world, including the United States, that we should stop doing research on it, we should stop developing. That was a protest. Do you think that Americans are stopping to do their research in their laboratories? I tell you, no. And in some countries, they don't even discuss it. At least, in democratic countries, they're asking questions. They're trying somehow look at it. So we need to be careful. But from the economic point of view, as I said, there's a certain threat, like always in new technologies. The threat, and people are always threatened. When there was the first industrial revolution, people believed that actually steam machines will kill animals. Actually, that steam trains are making a noise, and because of they move, and also they use actually the horn. The cows will lose milk, or they will start to be dying. There were all sorts of worries about it. We know that this was actually a nonsense, but we have to be concerned about those things. I'm sorry, I cannot give you a direct answer, okay? I simply don't know. Yes?
I have a very optimistic question.
Okay.
Are there any ways all this knowledge could be included into the educational system?
Yes. Yes, I believe so. That's my job, actually. I see my task as being an educator. That's what I'm doing with you, okay? But I believe that those topics need to be introduced. For instance, since I've mentioned that my wife, she's a professor of law, last year she developed a training actually on lectures on blockchain and new technologies. They are conducting by her, but also by people from IBM. And for the first time at the university, which is the oldest university, one of the oldest in Europe, actually it has 600 years old, they are already dealing with those topics for postgraduate students. University of Warsaw doing that. A lot of universities all over the world, they are also involved in these new technologies. In terms of artificial intelligence and the ethical issues, the most advanced is MIT, okay? Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Also Stanford University is very much advanced. So there are some academic institutions who are already doing not only research, but they are educating. Big companies like IBM. IBM is doing a lot of things to actually educate the programmers. They've introduced their own codes of ethics. If you go into IBM and check artificial intelligence and do ethical rules, you may find very interesting things. I'm in touch with those guys from Microsoft, Google, IBM on a constant basis. I talk to them. They do educate people because they know about those dangers, especially about the biased artificial intelligence. It's a huge problem. Really, there are a lot of scandals that happened over the last 2 or 3 years, and we need to eradicate. So yes, this is happening, but it has to happen more and more and more. But if I was conducting this lecture 2 years ago, I would tell you there are basically no educational processes. Now it is, and it's growing faster. Universities and academics, they can see money into it. And the money really goes there. The European Union is going to spend over the next 2 years 250 million euro on research and development in blockchain area. So this money comes. This is the European Union. Other organizations are already coming with money actually to do education, to do research. I do it among actually economists and in academic community by organizing conferences. There are a lot of conferences as well, educational conferences. There was a big conference last year in Kiev. Unfortunately, I couldn't come, but I think that there were 3,000 people here. Anybody else? We have another, okay, last question because we have Mr. Dudkiewicz with...
A really quick question. Are there any spheres, areas in Poland where blockchain is used already?
Yes, I've already mentioned that. For instance, there are 2 banks who are using it as a, how is it called? A durable... Anyway, for instance, 2 Polish banks, as I said, they are using it so they can actually put the information about their fees, about the interest rates and whatever on the website. They use blockchain, so it cannot be removed and cannot be changed actually without actually people being known about it. They save, those 2 banks are saving approximately about, let's say, 5 million euro each per year. Okay, so it's a real saving. They spent, on researching that, they spent about 1 million euros. This will actually develop even further. There are some other companies that are already using blockchain. For instance, I've mentioned Golem actually. This is the Polish business. They collected actually $8.5 million in 30 minutes, sorry. What they do is they employ private computers. They combine the power of the private computers. So they have something like a supercomputer, and they rented it out. So for instance, if you actually do a a movie, and when you have a lot of art, visual effects, whatever, okay, they take a lot of computer power. Actually, you need to have huge computers to be able to process that. But you can go to Golem and hire this power, and it's not very expensive. And what they do is they act as an agent by employing private computers, setting them, and it works in the form of a blockchain. It works, really works. Those are at least some examples I can give you. There are some others as well. In other countries, as I said, blockchain has already happened, like in Estonia, you have, another interesting example, Finland, for instance. They use blockchain. They have migrants, like everywhere, okay, coming from different countries. And some of those migrants, they had no documents, no identity documents. They wanted to give them documents, so instead of giving them paper documents that can be forged or lost or whatever, they gave them e-identity, and by using that, those people, they can move themselves, and they can also go to shops, for instance, and they have a special allowance, and they can use actually their identity to get themselves food and other things within the certain limit that they have. So that's what they do in Finland. They're very interesting things. I've already mentioned to you that they use blockchain, for instance, for land register in Sweden, in Ghana, and Uttar Pradesh in India. They use actually blockchain, for instance, to register motor vehicles. I know that in the United States there's an aviation school which is using blockchain to issue certificates for pilots because there was a forgery. It's very expensive to get a pilot's license, about $200,000 US to fly big planes. And some people were forging it by getting into records, changing. Hackers were actually placing people's names, whatever. So right now, they have it on blockchain. It cannot be touched. It's impossible to change it and remove it. So those are real examples of what was happening.
But in public sector in Poland, in public sector?
In public sector in Poland, no. People, the Polish government is actually making some attempts. Mr. Dudkiewicz, who is going to take the floor in a second, perhaps can tell you what happens actually because he was the president of the third largest Polish city and the most innovative president. So he can tell you to what degree for instance, Polish cities can use actually, and they are using modern technologies. But I will tell you that according to my knowledge, they are considering it, but they are not using it yet. Mainly because of the regulatory issues, because now regulations are not ready. Regulations need to be prepared. But I have to say, fairly enough, in Poland, the Minister of Digital Affairs is working pretty hard to bring those regulations about, because my wife is participating in some of those bodies, and she's also a member of the EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum, so I got a first-hand knowledge of what is happening. But it's, as I said, technology is developing much faster than the regulatory framework, and this is a real problem. Yes?
Whether you can share a presentation with us.
Once again?
Whether you can share a presentation.
Yes, that's what I said. You will get this presentation by the end of the course. I already spoke to Irina. You can have it. No problem. You're welcome. So now Mr. Dudkiewicz, who has disappeared. Thank you very much.